Today on Locked On Phoenix Suns, one of the more anticlimactic days in Phoenix Suns history. We went into it with fireworks expected. Not only did those fireworks turn yellow and blue, but the Suns also lost in ugly fashion to the Oklahoma City Thunder. We'll break down that game and what happened across the NBA heading toward the trade deadline next.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Phoenix Suns. I'm Brendon Kleen, a staff writer at Awful Announcing and a credentialed Suns media member. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen to kick off your Thursday. Don't forget Locked On Suns free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. So click that follow or subscribe button. Do what thousands of other Suns fans have already done. Become an everydayer and get locked on to the Phoenix Suns right here each and every day. Today's episode is brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook. Super Bowl 59 is here, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel. New customers can bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. So download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Joining me for the first time in a long time from Bright Side of the Sun and the Locked On Podcast Network, Brendon Dueñas. How you doing?
I could lie and say I'm doing great. Like most Suns fans, I'm definitely going through it right now. But you know what? I'm excited to be back on the show with you and vent a little bit and kind of get that podcast itch off. Because it's been a long season. So today was kind of a culmination of everything that's happened and seemingly come to an end. So rough day, but excited to be here nonetheless.
All right, 135-99. The game is actually not over, so that's not the final score. I'll give it to you in 1 minute and 44 seconds, if not sooner, and we'll get that number out of the way. But the Suns lost is the bottom line, regardless of what that score is. That is why we are recording early, and like you said, it is kind of an illustration, I think, Brandon, of a lot of the games this season, and especially this matchup. And it's not, to me, like I'm obviously, as people can see, I'm not at home. I said yesterday I'm kind of house sitting for my parents and whatnot, so I'm watching the game in the living room of my parents' house with my cousin and my wife, and I was like, the Suns are going to lose tonight. And they were like, why are you being so down? Like, what do you know? And I was like, no, it's the Thunder. They're going to lose. And so I think we know this OKC team has the Suns' number by now. That part's not a surprise. But they also happen to be the best team in the West. And so the fact that the gap is so big with the best team in the West kind of just illustrates how far away this team is, period. And the fact that physically they just look like they're playing a different sport sometimes, it's like, this is, we could go the direction of this is why you go after Jimmy Butler, or this is why any fill in the blank you want to do. This is the matchup they need to clear, and they're not even close to it. So it really does put a lot of this stuff into a nutshell.
It really does. And look, even if the Suns did make the play-in and they somehow won that and made it to the actual playoffs, this is the team you're most likely going to run into in round one. And I get Kevin Durant was out tonight. They were missing Chet as well. So they're a team that's not complete either. And they're a machine. And look, in a 7-game series, like, I just don't think the Suns are equipped to beat these teams at the top of the West. And I think we all know this. That was kind of the thinking behind their interest in Jimmy in the first place. But yeah, I mean, tonight they shot 60%. They're up by 2 at halftime. Things were looking promising, but at the same time, but in the back of your mind, you knew like that 60% mark was not sustainable. They hit 10 threes in the first half, and then the Thunder decided to turn it up a notch after probably taking them a little bit lightly without Durant, and it was over. It just feels like a rinse and repeat anytime the Suns are in a big game. All it takes is their opponent to go on one run, and they're done. There's no fight. There's no counter. It's just been the theme this season, as Suns fans know.
Yeah, 43-16 in the third quarter, 22-4 turnover margin, which is insane, and the Thunder turned those 22 turnovers into 23 points. Fast break points, 12-2 in favor of OKC. Points in the paint, 60-28 in favor of the Thunder. And the Suns even got to the free throw line tonight. And they outshot them from three, but it just didn't matter. They were just, I was trying to think of the metaphor. It's like, if you accidentally scrape your knee near like a freaking shark or something, like that is what it's like giving this team those bonus easy points, because they already create turnovers and fast break points and transition points better than anybody. If you're just going to toss it to them, like you're just asking to get your what kicked, which is basically what happened tonight. So yeah, we don't need to, I think, dig a deeper hole or anything. No Kevin Durant in this game, like you said. We did see Bradley Beal have a decent night, but appeared to kind of get some, I don't know if they're injuries, but, bumps and bruises along the way. Ryan Dunn leaves this game. He also got demoted from the starting lineup. So they're searching for answers and not finding any. Brandon, do you have any final thoughts on this game before we get to the real meat of that anticlimactic Wednesday, February 5th that I teased?
I think Suns fans that watched that game and saw that, especially this time of year with the trade deadline and juicier topics, we should probably, not kind of put them out of their misery of talking more about this game, because it was just brutal, and there's not much more to add to it really at this point. It was a rough night. It was expected, and it goes to show that this is why they are where they are.
Yeah, I can't remember a team, even like, I guess the years where the Suns were really, really bad, we didn't even care about matchups and things like that. But even dating back to the Nash years or anything, I can't remember a team having the Suns number quite this much as OKC has for the past couple of seasons. It's pretty crazy. But you mentioned, not beating the dead horse and moving on from the downtime of this game. I wish I had better news in the next segment, but the Suns did not get Jimmy Butler. That's not exactly happiness either, but we will talk about the Golden State Warriors stealing Jimmy out from under the Suns' grasp and what that all means for the future of this Suns team next. First, basketball is heating up, and there's no better way to get in on the action than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With over 10 million members and billions in awarded winnings, Prize Picks makes it easy and fun to turn your sports knowledge into real money. Here's how it works. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and if you're right, you could win up to 1,000 times your cash. Prize Picks even has a free pick for the big game, where Patrick Mahomes only needs to throw for 1 yard for you to win. Pair that with one more correct pick, and you're cashing out. So they're giving you one. You only got to get one more, and you get the big win. Let's say, though, you're super excited about any of the moves going on around the NBA. Maybe you think Brandon Ingram just got traded to the Raptors right before we recorded. Maybe you think when he comes back, he's going to have something. Or maybe you think RJ Barrett, well, there's not enough to go around. Maybe you're going to go less on him, or whatever it might be for you. That is all you got to do. More or less on any stat for any player. Mix and match sports. You can go from 2 players all the way to 5. Set that lineup quick. Get your money quick if you win, and have some fun. Download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA for $50 instantly after you play that first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Alrighty, here we go. The biggest news of the day, Brandon. Jimmy Butler getting traded to the Golden State Warriors for, I think, a relatively weak package, all things considered. I want to remind everybody to sign up for the Locked On Suns daily newsletter before we get to Jimmy. It's at LockedOnDaily.com. Just type your email address in. It's free for you. You get great analysis on the NBA, the Suns, links to the best news on the Suns. Stay up to date with the podcast, fantasy advice even. Again, free for you, supports us, and it's great content. What more could you want? All right. So, Brandon, let me just go through the trade, and then you tell me what you thought of it. So, the Heat get Andrew Wiggins. That seems to be it as far as players that they're going to keep. They also got a protected 2025 first-round pick, although it's top 10, so you would expect it probably will go out. The Warriors are likely to, make the play-in or at least be at the back of the lottery. If not, And then the Jazz get Dennis Schroeder. There's some other players going other places. And of course, the Warriors get Jimmy Butler. What did you think when it finally came together, this deal we've been talking about for, I was going to say 2 months, but really more like 3, Brandon?
3 months. Yeah, it feels like 3 years. I mean, my initial thought is just relief. Like, I'm glad it's over. I did think the deal itself was a little bit light, but at the same time, like, how much leverage do the Heat really have, especially if the Beal situation, like Shams reported, that the Suns couldn't find a third or fourth or fifth team to get that deal done, and it's really just the Suns or Warriors. There's only so much you're going to get out of Beal or out of Butler in that scenario, and so I thought Wiggins is a very Miami type player too. He's someone that I feel like will fit right in and probably exceed expectations. Is just a low maintenance 3-and-D occasional scorer type wing that can fit in. And look, Pat Riley was very stubborn. He's probably happy that he blocked Jimmy from Phoenix. And at the same time, that's what the no trade clause does, is it causes issues, and the contract itself it's tough to move. And that's why all these deals are like 3, 4, 5 team deals. It takes all 3 or 4 or 5 of those teams to agree to it to happen. So it's definitely I'm glad it's over with, but at the same time, it just seems it was like a long time coming that it was kind of a train wreck at the end after all this hype. And in typical Suns fashion, it's just what we come to expect. But I love trade season, so I can't get too down. I love the chaos, but at the same time, seems like everyone else besides Phoenix that's been involved so far.
Yeah, I think the Suns will make one more deal, and we will get to that to close out the show. What's realistic to expect? What is the direction that should take? We'll kind of do the Suns part of this, since there ended up not being a Suns part of it, to wrap up the show. But yeah, I think, so basically, again, the Heat get Wiggins, a pick in the teens, and I guess that's kind of it, right? Like that's
PJ,
sort of going to be it. And
Tucker.
Yeah, PJ Tucker, it sounds like they're gonna keep around, maybe just as a locker room guy. I don't really know.
The new Udonis.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if I was gonna say I don't know if his career extends beyond this year, but maybe they'll do the glorified assistant coach route with, like they did with UD. But it just shows you how much they didn't want Beal. It really does, because I mentioned, like, there's some players going different places. Kyle Anderson is one of the guys that is allegedly going to be sent somewhere else, but he was going to go to Toronto originally when this thing broke, and now it sounds like he's not. If the Heat have to give another team something to take Kyle Anderson, or end up just having to keep him, let's just say they keep him for simplicity's sake, you're talking about $35, $37, $39 million over the next 3 this year, plus 2 more that the Heat now have in extra money. The whole thing the whole time was they didn't want Beal or a lot of even other players on other teams separate from the Suns, because they didn't want they want to be a cap space team in 2026, and put Pat Riley's rings on the table and go get some kind of free agent, and they don't want to clog their books and all this stuff we were hearing. And then they get 2 players who have contracts exactly the same length as Bradley Beal. And if you add it all up, again, we don't know if they'll keep Kyle Anderson for sure, but just to say that maybe they do, that's only like $15 million less than what Beal would have made, and Beal is a better player than those guys. I mean, you could debate with Wiggins, I guess, because Wiggins is bigger, more available, whatever, but I think most people would say in a vacuum, Bradley Beal's a better player, and the Heat need offense. So it just really drove home that we heard it from the beginning. I never doubted it, but it was just a reminder, like, that was a hard line for them. They really just did not want Beal, and I think once that was true, this whole thing got complicated, and it kind of led us right here where the Suns don't have Jimmy Butler. Like, that might have just sort of been the whole thing the whole time.
Yeah, 100%. I think Miami is just such a different front office too, in the way they go about things. They're super selective of the players they do bring in, like extremely selective. So that's something that if they weren't in on Beal, I don't think that was a smokescreen. I don't think that was fluff. I think that was just the truth. So the whole situation was like, okay, now we have to find a team that can take him on and also make all the salaries work and figure it out. And the options seem limited. And when you factor in the no trade clause, it's really, the cave closed pretty quick. And I think it's at that point, like that's where Miami probably just wanted to get a deal done and not be stuck waiting if the Warriors went a different route. So yeah, it's unfortunate and unfolded this way, depending on how you feel about it. But I think it's just the reality that the Suns are probably going to be stuck with Beal. And it looks like we got a Shams bomb live. Sorry, I just had to make sure it wasn't a Suns related thing. The Lakers just got Mark Williams.
Oh,
for Dalton Connect and Cam Reddish. Interesting. Anyways, so that's fun. Lakers getting another great young player.
And the pick they didn't send. It's like all the stuff they should have sent for Luka is going to.
This is just ridiculous. Anyways, yeah, this is just, it feels like a nightmare for Suns fans. I mean, the Lakers are getting all this young talent. The Spurs have Wemby now paired with Fox. The Warriors got Butler, and we're just sitting here with nothing. And that's why I'm wearing
still aren't even terrible. It's like all the teams that have wrecked the Suns' dreams over the years are doing it again. Look, I guess the other part of this, the Warriors getting him, the Suns not getting him, the Beal angle. And I think you're absolutely right in terms of like this kind of being the wake-up call. Forget this even negotiation, but just we heard about the Levine and the Bucks and all the other kinds of constructions that got thrown out there in the rumor mill over the course of this negotiation. And it just really does feel like this was the wake-up call for Beal is not movable, and whatever you might dream up for the summer or anything else, like it is going to be incredibly difficult to move him in any way, ever. And he might just be on this team until this contract runs out. And again, we'll kind of circle back on that in the next segment. But the other part that I was getting to was that Butler promised everybody that he was not going to sign an extension anywhere but Phoenix, including this week, saying he wouldn't do it in Golden State. And I understand, you got to negotiate and draw a hard line until the absolute last second. But it's just another part of this thing that ended up not being true. The Heat won't take on money. Ended up not being true. The package was going to be really big and not true. All this stuff. And now it's like Jimmy signed an extension with Golden State and clearly had a longer list than just Phoenix, at least in the very back of his mind the whole time.
Yeah, 2 days ago, this was dead, right? In the NBA world, there was several people that I trust that said that whole thing was dead, and Jimmy himself, his agent, it seemed like the Warriors were not even in the conversation anymore. Then, like you said, once the pressure ticks and the options, like once reality hits, that's when things have to get done. So that's the beauty of the trade deadline is there is a deadline involved, and hence the word trade deadline. So I mean, but again, I think there's a sense of frustration, but also relief that this is over. Now it's about what's next, and good Lord, we got to figure that out.
Yeah, I guess we can just jump to that because I have a question coming off of the Jimmy miss that I think can get us there, but we'll answer that next. And it really revolves around how did this whole protracted negotiation leave everybody feeling? Because Jimmy's not here, but all the hard feelings that came up along the way of trying to get Jimmy, those are still here. And so I think it's worth exploring before we even get to the moves they could make. Where does this leave this locker room and this organization from an emotional standpoint? So we'll do that coming up next. First, Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities. And there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with the FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can also adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. Super Bowl betting's awesome. I think everybody knows that. Even if you're not a regular, awesome, all-the-time bettor, you love to bet on the Super Bowl. But you want to get your bonus bets before the big day comes. You want to do it before Sunday. So, as I've been telling you time and again, you go to the world of college basketball. And on Thursday, you have Towson at Stony Brook. They are road favorites, minus 430. That's a nice one. in terms of big favorites. There's not a lot, actually, it's looking like on this Thursday slate. Some close games, I guess. But, here we go. Quinnipiac. They always tend to be massive favorites. Whatever their conference is, they're just the kings of it. Canisius at Quinnipiac. You don't need to know where the schools are. I've told you that before. Just get the win. Minus 2,500. Take the bonus bets from FanDuel, then have some fun on Super Bowl Sunday. All at FanDuel.com. Bet just $5. If you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59. All right, Brandon, let's wrap it up here and pick back up on that thread I think that I suggested right before the break, which was, how do we think this is leaving everybody feeling? Because Bradley Beal, he had to address it on the record multiple times. His agent went on the record multiple times. It was no secret at all that this was, including him, that he was on the outs if they could find a way to make it work. And then this week, you throw in the added bonus of the uncertainty and nervousness about not getting Jimmy, then transported over to, oh crap, we might lose Kevin Durant. And the Warriors obviously circled him as a result. And now he's having to leak out that he doesn't want to go there and get involved in all this mess himself. So now that's 2 out of the 3 stars. The whole front office is probably, pissed. This team continues to lose games. Like, what do you do with that before you even, I guess not before, but while you're figuring out how to even improve this thing? Like, is this emotionally screwed for the Suns already before we even talk about basketball?
Not necessarily. I don't think so, at least just because I think on the surface, it looks a lot more chaotic to the fans and the media and all that than it probably is behind closed doors. Obviously, we don't know what they're being told, how it's being communicated. Like, they could all be, I mean, we don't know if Beal, there's a few teams that Beal had to decline his no trade clause to. There's a lot of stuff that behind the scenes probably happened that we don't know about. But at the same time, like, I think once the deadline's passed, that's when teams will usually kind of form together and gel and, like, okay, we're past this. There's no distractions. The media is going to stop asking us about this. Let's lock in. I'm just going to operate under the assumption we're going to have Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal on this team for the rest of this season. And I think they'll have no choice but to do the same. And I think they're going to have to figure out a way how to win with each other, and whatever moves they make tomorrow or tonight, maybe we get some late night Shams bombs. I think that will kind of set the tone. If they don't, I don't think they're going to not do anything like that. That just doesn't feel realistic at this point. Like, from an optic standpoint, you can't after what we've seen. So I do think they're going to try to improve, but at the same time, like you said, there's been so many distractions, and it's got to be draining. And I think a lot of fans will probably take out that frustration on Beal, which is not necessarily his fault. It's just you traded for that, so it's not like it was a surprise or a secret or like a small text or on the label. Like, it was right there in bold writing that he had this no trade clause. So yeah, I guess they'll work through it and hopefully come out focused after the deadline passes. But again, we still got to get through that. We don't know what else is going to pop up.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't think all hope is lost or anything. I mean, you do still have 3 max players, 3 all-star, players on your roster, and, a $10 million coach and like, you're all in. You can't escape that just because people's feelings might be hurt. Like, that doesn't change the reality. You're still in the thick of the play-in race. You can still convince yourself, hey, win a couple games, get lucky in a game 1 or a game 2 on the road, and anything can happen. Like, that still has to be the mentality, even if games like, that Thunder game we opened the show with make it a little hard to imagine that going so great. But hey, maybe you don't play the Thunder. I think that has to be it. But at the same time, I think you kind of have to be reasonable too. Like, you're probably not, it's not going to be all 3 first-round picks in Grayson Allen, or you kind of, I do think, have to hedge your bets a little bit. So maybe can you split the difference, right? Like, can you see if there's a taker for Tyus Jones for a few picks, seconds? We're not talking firsts, but also attach a first to Yusuf Nurkic and get off of him and maybe get some kind of role player, a lesser role player back there. Like, can you do a little bit of both things? That's probably what I would be looking to do if I'm the Suns, and be pretty active on the phones and just see what happens, because you're talking about smaller salaries and easier fits and everything. Maybe there's a deal there that you didn't think would happen because you've been so focused on Jimmy Butler and Kevin Durant for the past 2 weeks. Maybe there's a Grayson Allen deal that just pops up randomly on Thursday morning and you're open to it. And then maybe you get a little back and okay, now we're moving, So that would be my mentality. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good way to put it. Like, I'm not going to sit here and be optimistic about what we've seen, because I don't think there's frankly a lot to be optimistic about. But I do think, to your point, you have this team. You're all relatively healthy. I know Durant's a little banged up right now, but it doesn't seem to be super serious. Like, if they make a couple moves and maybe there's something we don't see coming and they improve, good. I need to stop myself there, because it just feels like the whole like continuity, improve on the margins thing we've done several times in the past. So I'm not going to fall into that.
I mean, a move like Nick Richards is kind of a decent example, right? Like, they saved money, which kind of got overlooked, but they did. He's under contract for more than just this season, and he's young. So it's like, it's kind of like a rental for this season to try to improve on the margins, but it also accomplishes more than that. Like, can you do more Nick Richards deals? That's kind of what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think there's hope around acquiring people like that can come in and help in the short term, not kill long-term value. And hopefully, you never know what one move could do, because look, they still have a surplus of talent. The fit hasn't been great, but if they can just get hot and rattle off some wins, who knows? Winning cures all. So if they can find a way to do that again, win games, then that will probably be the number one thing that cures the mood. As far as the talent, there's still a very clear lack of athleticism and size, and the rebounding issue is very apparent. So if they can find a way to address those things without mortgaging the future, yes, I agree. I'm sold on that. You're already 2 feet in. You might as well throw your hands in there too. There's not much else they can do at this point.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's not what anyone necessarily wants to talk about, but if you just look at the NBA trade deadline, I don't know about the majority. A lot of the moves that are happening are much more about finances than any of us want to admit. And when I look at the Suns for next season, obviously the big 3 all make $50 million. That's a impossible thing to overlook, but they're only 17 million, 18, let's call it, into the second apron next season. So I would have an eye on trying to duck under that next season sometime, or this offseason. Can you get a little bit closer to that? And that is where you obviously think of Yusuf Nurkic, but even Grayson Allen, potentially even Royce O'Neal. Like, that you just have to face reality with some of this stuff. And the best front offices do this too. I mean, I don't even think you have to always think of it as like some kind of failure. I mean, I always point to Dallas. That's an awful example now because they just made the blunder of all blunders, in my opinion. But like, they're always buying and selling, the Mavs. They're a good example of that. And I'm sure there's others where you get a little bit of stuff from this player and you use it to get that player. And in the moment, it looks like you're selling when you make the first trade, and then all of a sudden you're buying when you make the next one. And that nimbleness, I think, especially with these aprons, is you just got to have it. The Suns it's harder for them to have that because of the 3 big contracts, but can you get a little closer and not have 20 million for Nurk and 17 for Grayson if you're a team that is kind of stuck? You don't need to have those guys soaking up that money. So I don't know. You said you had some names. Let's rifle through those real quick before we wrap.
Yeah, so just getting right into it, I think there's a couple that jump out as far as the size, athleticism, rebounding. Obi Toppin is one name. Larry Nance Jr. is another. Those are 2 that I think would help. Obviously, they're players that aren't going to make a huge difference, but there's role players. I mean, Torrey Craig is another guy that's it's become a meme at this point. He's just kind of been the guy they've acquired every offseason. Yabusele is another name that he's been playing incredible lately for Philly, and I don't know if they're actually going to trade him or not. Embiid's back; they're going to probably be trying to make a push. So I don't know if that makes a lot of sense for Philly, but for Phoenix, absolutely. Patrick Williams, if you're going to send, obviously there's a lot of questions about what that deal looks like because his contract is a little bit wild, and we don't know what his value is as far. It's negative in the sense of the contract, but we don't know if Chicago would send a pick or if we have to send a pick to them, depending on who we send back. So
Yeah.
Rob Williams is another name. If you want to go all in on center, it's risky, but I think he's the type of player, the type of swing that, battling back from injury, Portland has a super deep center rotation. I would take that swing just in terms of you get yourself a rim protector, someone that's athletic, and if he gets injured, you still have Nick Richards. It's not like he's your lone swing at center. So he's another name. And then you have someone like a Kobe White, who just throwing him in there for the Bulls thing. It seems like the Suns have loosely been linked to him in the past, but those are just a few names that popped out. There's no Jimmy Butlers in there. Nothing super exciting, but just some names on the edges that caught my eye.
Yeah, it's tough to find it feels like Chicago is one of the only destinations. I mean, Portland, I'm confused by for Nurk is what I'm saying. Portland, I'm
Yeah,
confused by because they're winning all of a sudden. I mean, I don't they're so far behind. I don't really think they're going to be able to make like a play-in push or anything, but that might change their future outlook. And do they really want to bring Nurkic back onto the team and have that bloated salary if they're starting to think about what's next for them and maybe trying to be more competitive? I don't know. Um, the Bulls, yes, they're obviously in a teardown. Like you go through Utah, Brooklyn, those teams are obviously more in the selling category, but they don't have quite the ideal salaries. The Wizards are in that
yep,
same boat. I guess Charlotte maybe has some center minutes to go around based on what we just saw with the Mark Williams trade that you mentioned. I guess you could be looking at like a Grant Williams or a Josh Green from them. Maybe there's something there with one of their young players on top of that, and you go that route. Grant Williams is hurt, but that might help, kind of like the Patrick Williams thing. Maybe you don't even have to send a pick if you're taking back one of their guys that's a little questionable as well. Those would be some of the teams I'm looking at. But yeah, Larry Nance I liked. I'm a little curious if Atlanta would trade him after they just lost Jalen Johnson for the season. Maybe they think they need
yeah,
Nance to play and they're still trying to win. That one made me, obviously, it's a bummer that Johnson got hurt, but I had liked the Nance idea for a while. And then I saw that. And I'm like, they probably need him now.
yeah,
So yeah. And then the Valanciunas move today, we saw that one kind of took somebody off of the board. So, I don't know. It
yep,
might be something we're not expecting. It might be a
yeah.
name or a team that just the salary works and they're willing to deal with the contract for Nurkic, and we just some random role player we're not thinking of just ends up on the Suns at 3 o'clock tomorrow.
Definitely a possibility. And Grayson Allen to Orlando is kind of one I've seen thrown around. I'm not going to throw any names out because it's just, I think you nailed it. I think it's going to be something we don't expect at this point because I feel like there's so many names floating around. Like it's going to come out of nowhere. It'll be creative. Hopefully, they're cooking something up because they need to do something. Look, I mean,
Yeah.
Tyus for picks, uh, added some athleticism, some size.
And at
Go
this
from
point,
there.
if you're not using if you're not using the first round picks that they have, that they went out of their way to create with that Utah trade, if you're not using that to get Butler at this point, you got it. Like you can't have Nurkic on the team at the end of tomorrow.
Yeah, no, it's a colossal failure if he's still on. If Yusuf Nurkic is on the Suns roster past what is it 1 p.m. Arizona time, then it's a colossal failure. And they have these picks. I think they need to add another big, obviously with Nurkic being shipped out, and make some other moves on the edges. Like you have these picks, you've unlocked your draft, so now you could choose which years you alternate in those in whenever you trade multiple picks. So I think you did that for a reason, hopefully. So I'm not saying just trade them to trade them. Like obviously it has to make sense, but they need to be aggressive and do what they can with that because again, that's like you said, you did that for a specific reason and you have it. So why not use it?
And for anybody sitting there thinking like, well, why can't they just do it in the offseason? They can, but the thing about it too is like you look at the Royce O'Neal edition last year, right? Where with how capped out and up against it the Suns are, getting another player who you can control long term, whether he's on a long term contract already, but just maybe younger and more of a fit than Nurk is. Like, ideally, if Patrick Williams could turn it around, that's an example of what I'm talking about. Or somebody who's heading into free agency and you get their bird rights and you can re-sign them. That's the benefit of getting something done at the deadline versus the offseason. It almost feels like the Suns, because of the aprons, the deadline stuff kind of makes more sense for them rather than the offseason when everybody is up for a new contract already and they might not have as many options. So that'll wrap us up. That is what I have as far as a guess. That's what Brandon has as far as a guess, and a hope and a dream maybe a little bit in there as well. We'll see what actually happens, and we will be back for you after the deadline on Thursday. The episode will go up as soon as we can post it, so you don't have to wait till the evening, of course. Enjoy all the craziness. I'm sure there will be more of it, even though we've already seen plenty, and we'll be back as soon as we can.